Let me tell you why I believe the path of the ancient modern is so important, so critical. To me, but to everyone listening. Today, there's this faith in something called science. One of the high priests of science is Neil DeGrasse Tyson. He talks about science the way a Baptist preacher talks about, tell me about when you came to Jesus. Could you please recount that to me? Tell me about your conversion. About 9 years ago, Neil deGrasse Tyson was having a folksy little talk with his good friend William Jefferson Clinton, Bill Clinton, the former president of the United States. And of course, as a preacher of science, Neil deGrasse Tyson wanted to know.
I asked him how science impacted his perspective during his time in the Oval Office. Check it out.
You know, the most valuable thing I had for perspective in politics in the White House was the moon rock.
I was going to ask you about
when we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the walk on the moon in 1999. NASA came in with a vacuum-packed, glass enclosed moon rock that was taken off the moon in 1969 that had since been carbon dated at 3.6 billion years old.
Wait a minute. I'm one of the high priests of science, and I know that you can't carbon date something unless it has carbon in it. Carbon dating works by finding things that were once a carbon-based life form, and they were taking in carbon because they were a carbon-based life form, and then they die, and they stop taking in new carbon. So as some of those radioactive carbon isotopes that they took in during their life degrade and go through their half-life, well, we can tell how long ago that carbon-based organism died. So could you tell me again, how'd you date that moon rock?
It's carbon dated at 3.6 billion years old. Carbon dated at 3.6 billion years old. So I asked, because I had supported the space program so strongly, I said, may I just borrow that till I leave? You can have it back when I go. I know it's not mine, but I really
I bet they didn't say no to that question.
They did not. So when you see these television coverage of the president meeting with a foreign leader or whatever in the Oval Office, there's two chairs and then there's this two couches and there's always a table between the couch. I put the moon rock on the table. And for the next 2 years, when we'd have like Republicans and Democrats in or people on two sides of any issue, and they'd start really, really getting out of control, I'd say, wait. You see that moon rock? It's 3.6 billion years old. Now, we're all just passing through here, and we don't have very much time. So let's just calm down and figure out what the right thing to do is. And it worked every single time. They looked, most
That's
everybody.
That's a cosmic perspective sitting in the middle of your table.
They were looking at an object that existed at a time they could hardly imagine.
Carbon dating 3.4 billion years ago on the moon. Well, this is big news. You mean to tell me there was carbon-based life forms on the moon 3.4 billion years ago? That would change people's perspective. Tell me more about it.
And it just gave them that little bit of space in their mind and spirit to try to figure out, okay, let's go at this one more time. And that's what we got to keep doing. We just have to keep moseying around both out there and in here. And, if you just keep stumbling toward Jerusalem, good things happen. I mean, I may be wrong about it, but that's what I think. I just think, that I'd give anything to be 20 again. I'd give up having been president and gamble on my chances in the future if I could live another 80 or 90 years just to see what's going to happen.
Just to see it.
Just to see it. It's amazing.
Oh, so you put that really ancient rock on the table, huh?
I put the moon rock on the table.
It was like, it got people religion, didn't it? It was like science right there on the table.
You see that moon rock?
And you told them, hold on, guys. This rock's 3.4 billion years old. The standard consensus, Mr. President, is that The Earth is 4.6 billion years old, so couldn't you have done that with any old rock that you found anywhere in the United States? Just go out to Delaware, or maybe go out to the Black Hills and pick up a rock. Oh, did I say the Black Hills? Yeah, that's a touchy subject, isn't it? You're lying to the American people about moon rocks. I don't think we ever went to the moon. I think these lying presidents are getting up here and laughing at us about it. We never went to the moon. Wasn't there a little moon rock that they gave to the Netherlands in 1969? The original Apollo astronauts brought a piece of petrified wood to the people of the Netherlands in 1969 and said, look, this came from the moon. And it turned out to be a piece of How did that happen? Whoops. Was that a mistake? Like it was in the same year. That's incredible. The chain of custody must not be too good with these moon rocks.
NASA came in with a vacuum-packed, glass enclosed moon rock.
Yeah, I mentioned the Black Hills because, strictly speaking, that's not part of the United States, so you can't take a rock from there, can you? Well, of course, the United States has been laughing about the treaties that they made with the people to whom that land and those resources were given. That's the Lakota Sioux. When the Judeo-Christian American nation came to the nation of the Lakota were so strong militarily, the Lakota forced America to the bargaining table, and they said, let's sign a treaty. And in that treaty, I want you to put that this land will be ours. It already is ours. You will recognize that it's ours forever, and especially the Black Hills. But all this land, and they forced the American government to accede to these treaties specifying a very large area that would be off limits to the United States and to white settlers and the Judeo-Christian, self-righteous, land-grabbing Wendigo. And they signed the first Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1851. They signed another one. But those treaties have been egregiously ignored and violated by the United States, as anyone can see. Those lands were not made off limits at all, were they? America carved the faces of presidents in the Black Hills, those sacred Black Hills that are specified in the treaty as being acknowledged by the United States. These belong to the Lakota. They are off limits. In 1980, there was a U.S. Supreme Court case that said, you're right, the United States egregiously violated that treaty. Here, we're going to offer this set amount to the Sioux because of the violation. And you know what the Lakota Sioux said? We don't want that money. If we take that money, then we've settled. We've settled the violation of the treaty. And that's not what we want. We want the land that is ours. This isn't eminent domain. Eminent domain says, there's some land in my family, part of which was seized by eminent domain to put one of the interstates back in the 60s. The government came and said, you know what, this land, we're building an interstate, we're going to pay you this much and we're going to take this much. Well, they can do that. My family told them to go away. They came back with a higher offer and they said, go away. They came back with a higher offer and said, if you don't take this offer, the next time we will just take it, you won't get anything. So my family gave up some of that land. You know why? Because unlike the Sioux, you have to give in. If you're a citizen of the United States, you give in to eminent domain. Eminent domain it's under the law. But this was two nations, the United States invading another nation, the other nation being strong enough to say, you're not invading, we'll keep killing you if you keep coming. And the United States finally said, okay, let's sit down and hammer out a treaty. That's very different. That's not eminent domain. So you can't eminent domain that land that was acknowledged in that treaty. It's not a case of eminent domain, and if the Lakota took the money, it'd be like saying, okay, I guess it's like eminent domain. Every land has its price, and we have to take the price offered by the government, just like Dave's family had to take the price for that little strip of the land that the interstate went through. No, it's totally different. Totally different. But it's contested because the United States has been laughing at the treaty that they signed. They've been egregiously violating it. Well, guess what? When presidents go on with Neil deGrasse Tyson and say, hey, let's talk about a cosmic moment, and they all have a good laugh about the space rock that was carbon dated, they're laughing at you. They are violating the social contract. They are laughing at the American people about the space program. Presidents, 30 years after the supposed moon landing, should not still be keeping up the fiction of the supposed moon landing. No men ever went to the moon. Not from the United States, not from any country. The Apollo certainly didn't go to the moon in 1969. And as far as we know, nobody ever has from any other nation. No men have ever been to the moon, no women have ever been to the moon. And yet Bill Clinton gets on and tells you that this rock came from the moon. He's lying to you. Science, as presented by Neil deGrasse Tyson, is bullshit to hypnotize you while they laugh in your face. And later on in that clip, let's hear Bill Clinton a little bit more.
You know, if you just keep stumbling toward Jerusalem, good things happen.
His little folksy, aw shucks. I'm just stumbling towards Jerusalem. That's what he says. I'm just stumbling towards Jerusalem. So he makes reference to the other lie that's been perpetrated to allow the spirit of Wendigo. Judeo-Christianity, as you've been taught it, scriptural literalism, is demonstrably false. It is based on taking stories from the Bible literally. A literal Jesus. A literal Moses. I have shown, beyond any doubt, those stories are not literal. They are based on the stars. That's a very big deal. The church is lying to you. Somebody in those leadership structures, in those literalist organizations, know the truth. And yet they continue to tell you lies. Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Clinton, I don't know if they believe in the moon landing or not. But Neil deGrasse Tyson for sure knows that you can't carbon date something that never was a carbon-based life form. So he let that one slip past and just said, yeah, wow, a cosmic moment. He didn't say afterwards, hey, Mr. President, we're going to have to cut a little piece of that interview out. You know why? Because you're talking like there was carbon-based life forms on the moon 3.4 billion years ago, and we both know that's a pretty big admission. If it's true, that's a pretty revelatory statement. I think we might have just, maybe you misremembered what NASA told you when they brought you the rock. Let's go stumble on towards Jerusalem. Want to have a beer? They're lying to you. Modern scientism, as presented by National Public Radio and Neil deGrasse Tyson, is bullshit. Judeo-Christian values, as they've been taught to you by the literalist, scriptural supremacist religions that justified the lying and ignoring of the Treaty of Laramie, is bullshit. That's what Judeo-Christian values do. That's exactly what they do. It's a world-devouring system, and it's quite happy to lie as it's devouring. In the movie, The Lone Ranger, which explores the theme of Wendigo, which I used as a jumping off point for my video about Wendigo. There's a Wendigo spirit who pretends like he's a pillar of the community. And he gets up on a grandstand and he mouths these platitudes. We will honor and respect all of our treaties with the Comanche. And the Comanche, they're listening. And when he says that in the movie, they're sitting on their horses. And when they hear him say that, they don't say anything. They turn together, they turn their horses, and they turn their back on that lying Wendigo who's mouthing his platitudes, throwing in some religion, some Judeo-Christian claptrap. They turn their back on him. They don't justify it with an outburst. They just turn their back with dignity and ride away. They know. That's where we are. That's where you and I are right now. When Bill Clinton and Neil deGrasse Tyson are doing their little aw shucks interview about the 3.6 billion year old moon rock, carbon dated, they are mouthing platitudes about science and cosmic moments that are bullshit. We need to be like the Comanche in that movie and say, I'm not having any part of that. When somebody talks to you about Republican or Democrat in the United States, it's all bullshit. The Republican and Democrat presidents since 1969, actually since 1963 and the assassination of John F. Kennedy, have been lying about the space program. They've been lying to you about the space program since the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Republicans equally with Democrats. That includes Donald Trump during his first term. That includes Ronald Reagan during both his terms. That includes Jimmy Carter. That includes Richard Nixon, who had a phone call with the supposed astronauts who were standing in the Sea of Tranquility while they were on the moon. He had a wireless call with them. They're lying to you. They're lying to you while with the spirit of Wendigo, they steal your livelihood and devour the lives of others. You need to understand and see the truth. And what's the response? To turn back to the original ways, the ancient ways, before this lying spirit hijacked the ancient wisdom, hijacked the sacred teachings, the sacred stories. Those stories are not literal. Anyone who starts talking about a literal Jesus, they're wrong. They're either ignorant or they're liars. Anyone who talks to you about a literal Moses, they're wrong. They're either ignorant or they're liars. Moses crossing the Red Sea, you can see it in the heavens today. That's where the story came from. Moses receiving the 10 Commandments in the cleft of the rock, seeing God when he's in the cleft of the rock, you can see it in the heavens today. I've shown that. So we need to return to the ancient wisdom, because the lies that they're trotting out to you, the modern scientism, it's bullshit and they know it. The Judeo-Christian stumbling towards Jerusalem, it's bullshit and they know it, as it's taught by the literalist, scriptural supremacists. It's wrong and they know it. They're lying to you. That's why I chose the name modern ancient man. In many cases, we can't go back to the ancient teachings. Many cultures had those ancient teachings absolutely obliterated by the literalists. The literalists came in and obliterated those teachings. But we do have the myths of the world in some form from around the world. I've talked about the myths of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, the Norse myths, the myths of ancient India in the Vedas and the other Sanskrit texts, the myths of ancient China that weren't destroyed. You choose. But we need to go back to those ancient teachings and the correct understanding, the correct approach to them. And that's what I am trying to do, and I'm offering just little thoughts on that, little meditations on that in this series, Modern Ancient Man, the path of the modern ancient. Because we've all been lied to. They are lying to us. We need to just disconnect from that and say, I don't want to hear it. Or like the Comanche in that movie, they don't even say, stop, I don't want to hear that bullshit. They just turn away in silence. In their ancient wisdom. That's the wisdom we need to use to walk through the world. The ancient wisdom. It was given to all cultures of the earth. Not just one or another. All cultures have ancient wisdom, and we can go back to that ancient wisdom. It is all the same ancient wisdom. Different names to the gods and goddesses, same ancient teachings. And they are for us.